Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Tonight, I'm honored to have Jordan Maxwell. He is a researcher and independent scholar in the field of the occult, religious philosophy, secret societies, both ancient and modern, and their symbols. Mr. Maxwell, how you doing tonight?
Think okay. We'll find out pretty soon.
Very good. I'm excited to have you on. I've been trying to get you for a while because you're one of the leading experts when it comes to secret societies, occult symbolism, and the current control system that we live under. Tonight, I'd like to go as deep as we can. But first, I'd like to know what got you started with your research. And I understand you've had a couple of interesting experiences when it comes to possible extraterrestrials.
Yeah, I've had about 30, I think it's 38 or 39 extraordinary experiences in my life when it comes to extraterrestrial and other world experiences. That's a term I use that works for me. Other world experiences means it's real, but I don't know how to explain it. It's just things which happen and you see them and you experience them, but there's no way to explain it, you know. So I've had a lot of strange experiences in my life. I have them every day. I have little things that are really odd that happen. So I know that somebody or something is continually following me. And I see things, I know things, and I see things happening, and I meet people I'm supposed to meet. So I'm just fascinated with how much people don't know that's going on in the world they live in.
Have you always been able to see behind the curtain since an early age?
Yes, yeah. As a matter of fact, I go way back to like 7 years old. I began seeing and understanding things that adults didn't see and were not aware of. And I would ask questions of adults, and they would look at me as if I had 3 heads because they didn't understand what I was asking and they didn't know how to answer them. And I was putting them on the spot because I was asking them questions they didn't have an answer to, and I knew they didn't. That's why I was asking them. And I've had a lot of experience in that, knowing and seeing things which are happening that other people just don't see. So
now, I'd like to start by talking about our current control system. You know, we're governed by an ancient occult belief system, and I'd like to know how far can we trace this back? You know, is it Babylonian? Can it go before that? What are your thoughts?
I think it goes way before the Babylonian Sumerian. I think before Sumeria, there was already a profound, powerful spiritual system at work on the earth. And the Sumerians, they picked up on it. They were somehow or another privy to know about a lot of it. And I have been in business with Zecharia Sitchin. He and I were business partners, so I helped him with his books and helped get his work published and helped get him on radio and television. And so he and I talked a lot about the pre-Adamic man, I would call it, because I think that we were already here. The Bible does not say, incidentally, the Bible does not say that God created man. In point of fact, the Bible does not say God created man. And so we've talked about that. If you go back to the actual archaeolinguistics. Archaeolinguistics is the study of all the ancient languages of the world and where they've come from and how they connect behind the scenes. And so much of what we talk about in relation to the Hebrew religion or the Hebrew language is not Hebrew. It's Phoenician Canaanite, but the Hebrews speak it. And so we call that Phoenician Canaanite language Hebrew, but it's not Hebrew. It's Phoenician language, and it was founded in the area we call Canaan. So that's why in the Bible, that area today called Israel was called the land of Canaan. And so it's a Canaanite language. It's called Phoenician, from which we get our words. We get our word phonics. And in English, with phonics is very important. Why? Because it comes from phonation. And the word phony and phonics comes from phonation. And so once you understand the Phoenician language, which we call Hebrew, there is no Hebrew. There are Hebrew people who speak the language. And so we say their language is Hebrew. No, it's not Hebrew. It's Phoenician Canaanite. But once you understand those words and you go back, and I've talked with the rabbis for over the many, many years, and since 1960, almost 60 years, I've been talking to all the researchers and writers, rabbinical authorities, Jesuit theologians. I've talked with so many people who are very knowledgeable about the ancient languages of the world. And everyone agrees that nowhere in the Old Testament Bible, what we today call Old Testament Bible, nowhere does it say that God created man. That's a misunderstanding. It doesn't say that. And that's a very important point that a lot of religious people in the Western world believe that God created us, but that's not what the Bible says. It does not say God created man. That's a whole subject in itself.
Right. And it seems that once you get to the Roman Empire, they really, I guess you could say, perfected this current slave system that we're in today, wouldn't you say?
That's exactly right. They perfected the system. They certainly did. And boy, did it work well. They were ruthless in their power. They were power hungry and ruthless in it. They laid down a law, and if you don't accept that law, they cut your head off. They deal with you right now. If you even act like you're going to rebel against the Roman law, they'll deal with you very harshly, very quick. And so it was well understood in Europe, don't mess with Caesar. When the government says something, you just do it. Don't ask any questions, because they'll send in the military troops, and you'll wish to hell you'd have never been born, because they come in and kill everything. And so I understand where the system came from and what the words mean and the terms and the symbols, because I've been looking at it for 60 years. And believe me, the world, and I'm famous for saying this, the world does not work the way you think it does. It does not work the way you think it does. Nothing is what you think it is. There's always a bigger story behind the scenes yet.
I think one of the biggest things to come out of that is the illusion of choice that we have. Keeping us with that illusion keeps us, thinking that we are in charge of something, that we can make a difference somehow, right?
Yeah, what's that comedian, George Carlin?
Carlin, yeah.
Yeah, he said the people who run this planet are very close-knit people. It's like a club. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. And so once you understand that, yeah, they make the decision. It's called the golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rules. And so there's a whole world of usury, the way that they manipulate your mind with words and terms and concepts and ideas. And you come into the world as a baby. You don't know what's going on. You don't even know what you're doing here. And as you grow, you begin to understand the things you can do and what you can't do, and who's empowered and who's not empowered, who can do what, and you can't do anything. And so they begin to formulate your understanding of things. And eventually you will accept it because you want to be a part of the human civilization. So you just accept what everybody else accepts. But you don't think about who laid down these concepts and ideas and law and government and theology and religion. Who actually told us what to believe and how to act. Because once you do that, now you go back into history. And that's why it's very, very important to understand mankind's history. And that's something that's not taught in schools or universities today. Most people do not know anything about the history of the human family, where we've come from and where we learn what we think we understand, and our belief systems All of this stuff is all part of history, and people have no idea in the world what's been going on the earth. And it's really one hell of a story.
And, another aspect I'd like you to talk about of this illusion of choice that we have is our whole bogus political system, where it's the illusion that we can actually pick our leaders that are going to be running this country.
Yeah, I like what Dick Gregory once said. He says, we Americans are proud that we can elect our leaders, but you can't select our leader. Somebody else selects them. You just elect them. So don't think you can depend on how you can pick your leaders. No, you pick the leader that you like of the ones that were already selected for you. You don't select who that you want to run. You just vote for the ones who are running. And the ones who are running are usually already in the employ of the powers that be. So what these people that are running for government or running for office in government, they already work for the boss who runs the country. They're already there. That's why you are changing the administration. When you vote for a president, you're changing the administration. You're not changing the company. You're not changing the corporation and the way the world works. You ain't changing that. Nobody's changing that. But you are changing the administration as to how your country will operate in relation to the corporation and in relation to the way the world works. So you're not changing anything. And that's why George Carlin said we love to talk about how we're free for choice. We can make our own choices and we're free. And he said, yeah, when you go to Baskin Robbins, you can have chocolate ice cream, strawberry, and all the other different flavors of ice cream. That's the only freedom you've got. You don't have any other freedom. You do what you're told to do, or you don't have a job, and you need to go to school and learn what to understand and who wrote the books that you're reading and studying, who wrote them, and who says that they're true. Nobody says that they're true. That's what you just need to learn to read what the government wants you to know.
Now you mentioned that our country is basically a corporation. For those that don't understand, can you break that down to how we are basically corporate assets for a corporation?
Yeah, that's very, very important, very interesting. That it was back in when we were founded in the United States, we were called the United States of America. It was a republic back in 1776. So we were a republic. But after the Civil War was over, we were still a lot of things after the Civil War, but we were not united. We just got through having a civil war, which was bloody and violent in America. And it looks like that's what's coming again, some kind of a civil war for those who want to promote freedom and liberty and justice and the American way of feeling and the American way of living, as opposed to those who want to destroy our country and what we are as a culture of people. It's a cultural war, and there are people who are living right here in America today that hate you as an American. They don't like seeing Americans successful. They don't like seeing Americans making money and being free. And the one thing that all of the enemies of America hate is to see you free to do your own thinking. Nobody in power, in real political power around the world, wants to see the people under them free to do their own thinking. And therefore, America has big enemies who live here. They're eating our food, and they're living in our homes, and they're driving the new cars, and they're living well, but they hate you because you have the right to say no, and they don't like that. Totalitarians like Adolf Hitler, Mussolini, the communist dictators. None of these dictators and murderers want the people to have the right to say yes or no and to do your own thinking and be your own boss. No totalitarian, fascist, murdering government wants that. They want the people frightened to death and do what they're told to do. And so that's the way it works. And so that's why we have enemies in this country.
Now, you were telling us about how we basically became a corporation, too.
Yeah. And so in 1848, there was a beginning of a revolution in this country in 1848, from 1776 to 1848. And in 1848, there became a revolution in America. It was called a communist revolution. And ultimately, it brought about the collapse of the United States of America. There was a great civil war. And so that after the Civil War, as I said, the people of this country were a lot of things, but united was not one of them. We were not united. We just got through having a civil war. We weren't united. And so it was decided by the bankers and the politicians who ran government. The decision was made that since we're not united, and we're not going to be united, a lot of bad blood in this country against people around, between the peoples of this country. And so since there's a lot of real serious bad blood and the war just over, but it's not really over. They're no longer killing each other, but that doesn't mean they love each other either. So the war is now over, but it's not really over. So what are you going to do about all the people who are living here? They're already living here. They all want to eat, and they all want to grow, and they all want to have children and have their life. So how are you going to get them to work together? It was decided in the 1870s that we should make United States of America no longer operating United States. We're not united. So it was decided to make the United States into a company, a corporation, like Ford Motor Company or General Electric or the big oil company. Make the United States into a corporation, a company. And so the United States became known as the United States Incorporated. It's a company. And it was referred to like U.S. So if you are a U.S. citizen, that means you are an employee of a corporation called United States or U.S. You're no longer an American born in the United States of America. You are a U.S. citizen. Look it up. It means that you are an employee of a corporation. And therefore, it also means if you're a U.S. citizen, it means your body is a corporation. You are a corporation. And therefore, you are, as a corporation, you are a business. And so everything you do is a business as a corporation. And happily, it doesn't matter what you do. It's none of my business. But what I do is none of your business. Why? Because we're both corporations. We're both a business. But we can work together if we want. As my business is not your business, and your business is not my business. But if we want to work together, we can, as long as you get a license, because now you're a company and I'm a company. And so when I see you with somebody, I see you with a friend coming out of a restaurant one night, and I say to you the next day, you know that person you were with last night? Yeah, they're bad company, and you better watch out for them because they're really bad company. And you say, mind your own business. Company, business. Then I find out you're going to get married, and she's going to be your partner. What are we talking about here? Company, business, partner. You're talking about commerce, business. It's just business. That's why if you're going to get married, you got to have a license because you're a company and she's a company. So you got to have a license because you're doing business. Why? Because if it doesn't work out, you're not going to God, you're going to court. Bring your house, your car, and everything else you own is just business. It's commerce. Look up the word commerce in a law dictionary. It will tell you commerce in law is called sex. Sex is commerce. It's a business. You don't think so? You mess around with it and you can get in big trouble in business. It can cost you a lot. And so when you get married, it's a commercial operation. That's why you have to have a marriage license. And so it's interesting the way the world works. Because when you go to court, why do you have to go to court? You play basketball on a court. You play tennis on a court. There are words and terms. You need to understand what the words mean. How do you play tennis on a court? You play with a racket. Why? Because the whole idea of a court is a racket. It's a commercial enterprise to control you. They made you into a company, and happily what you do is none of my business, and what I do is none of your business. And so they made you into a business and a company, and now they are able to control you through a court. It's a very interesting world that we live in, and how these words are all connected. And it has to do with the fact that you are, in point of fact, a company. You're a corporation. And you know, there's so much to that subject we could talk about for hours, about where our money comes from and who runs a corporation and who runs this corporation called U.S., the U.S. corporation. Who owns it? Well, there's obviously all corporations have owners. They're stockholders. And so you are a stockholder. You're just a little tiny, little small stockholder. But your body is worth like $7 to $9 million on the New York Stock Exchange. Your body is worth millions on the New York Stock Exchange. Why? Because you're just a small stockholder in the great corporation called the U.S. Most people don't know that their bodies are being bought and sold on the New York Stock Exchange, and they're worth millions of dollars. Most people have never heard about, don't know anything about this, never heard about it. I've heard it many, many years ago. And I've watched the law, and I know the way the law works because you're a corporation. And I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not preaching law. But what I am doing is I'm trying to educate you as to how the world works around you. But do not do anything, and this is a caution, I'm cautioning everyone, do not do anything about what I am telling you. I'm merely educating you, not so you can go out and do something, because you can get in trouble, serious trouble. You can go to jail or prison by trying to do something I talked about. So I'm not recommending you do anything. I'm just trying to educate you. And the way this corporation works is very, very strange. And most people have no idea in the world how the world really works. It's a business.
Now, being a part of a business, the things that we own, we don't really even own them, do we?
No, we do not. You do not own anything. You don't own anything. If you go out and you buy a brand new car and you put the cash down, the full amount for the car, put the cash on the table, and you think, boy, I bought the brand new car for cash. It's mine. No, it's not yours. You don't own nothing. And so you need to understand that you have an equitable interest. You have an equality. You have an equitable interest, meaning you've got money involved in it. And so if I want to buy it from you, if I want to get the car and you want to get rid of it, I have to give you some money to back up what you put into the car. It's called equality. It's called an equitable interest. But I'm not giving you the money so that I can own it. I'm giving you the equality of the money you have involved in it, because you don't own it. And once I buy it, I don't own it. And why do you not own it is because you never paid for it. You didn't pay for it because according to the United States commercial system, which is based on the British system of commerce around the world, according to the law, our money is gold and silver coin, period. And if you didn't come in with $30,000 in gold coins to pay for that car, you didn't pay for it. You merely use the paper money, which we use is called Federal Reserve notes. That's bank notes. So our money is no longer really money because money in America is gold and silver coin. That's real money. But if you didn't use gold coins to buy your car, then you don't own it. You merely have used Federal Reserve notes. And if you look on the dollar bill, you will see it says this is not money, but it's here. We can be used as money. And on the older dollar bills, it used to say you can take this bill into a bank and have it and trade it in for real money. That's what the bill said. Trade it in for real money, gold and silver coin. So therefore, if you're not using real money, then you're just using some paper that's published by a company called the Federal Reserve. You're just using some paper that you didn't pay for anything. You are using the paper that you are playing with the monopoly. And if you're using the monopoly and play the game, that's fine. It'll work because it's part of the game. But if you want to go outside and buy a car with that monopoly money, it's not going to fly. Nobody's going to take it. So the point being is that when we use our money in America, it's not money. It represents the value of something. It represents the value. And the way it represents is the value of your body. Your body is on the stock exchange and it backs up our money. That's a whole story too. I mean, there's so much I could go into right now. We could talk for hours and we don't have that kind of time, but
definitely. But it all starts for us with our education system, and it's a vicious cycle with that because they're just teaching us bullshit. It has nothing to do with the way the world works. They're just making us good slaves and good employees.
That's exactly right. That's precisely what's happening. The whole idea of school is to teach you how to be in compliance. They ring the bell and you go to your first class. They ring the bell, you go to your next class. So the whole idea in school is when they ring the bell, you know what to kiss and you know what to do. And you better know what to do. And everybody in that class better know what to do. So when they ring the bell, what are you going to do? You're going to get up and go where you've been told to go. And everybody's going to learn how to do that in the school. Everybody. So the whole idea in school is to teach you what to do when they ring the bell. You are no longer in charge of anything. They tell you what to believe. They tell you what to think. They tell you how to think. And they actually make you look at television and watch things to mimic them. So that's why we have television programs. We have radio and television programs. What are you talking about, our television program? Something your eyes are seeing and you're watching what the action is and what's being said. Your brain is being programmed by what you're watching so that you now know how to react when something happens. You watch it on television. And so when something happens between you and your girlfriend, well, you've seen so many movies, you know how to react. And so now you know what to say and what not to say and how to react. Why? Because you had your brain programmed, because you're watching television programs. And so the motion picture world is very, very interesting, how it really works and who's really behind it, where the money comes from. It's all there to promote the government. Government decides everything. And the people who are running this government are not actual government people. They are what is called lawmakers. They're the lawmakers. And so you need to know how this corporation called United States is actually, the corporation is actually working. It doesn't work the way you think it does. We can talk for hours on this, as I said, so there's so much to talk about.
I'd like to get a little bit into who's in control behind the scenes. I know that the world's run by secret societies and secret governments. You know that. A lot of my audience knows that. But what I'm wondering is it all coordinated, or is it different factions just competing for power?
I think it's all coordinated. That's my opinion. But I've only been looking at it for 60 years. But I have come to the conclusion that it's very well all coordinated, because when you begin to look at the symbols, the words, the terms, the concepts, and the hand signs, and understand how secret societies actually work. If you don't understand the idea or the concept of a secret society, think about the mafia. Think about the underworld organizations with the Medellin cartels in South America and Central and South America and Mexico. The drug cartels, that's a government. They act like government. They have more money than government. They actually control the people. And so if you want to understand how secret societies work, well, think about the organized crime throughout the world. Think about all the different Mexican gangs, the Russian mafia, all the different organized criminal organizations going on all over the world, and especially in America, on the East Coast, and in the Midwest, and in Chicago, all the mob operations, mafia. It's secret societies, guys who work together, but you don't know that they know each other. They work together. And so that's how government works. It's all based on who you know and what organization you belong to, and what you're doing with your fellow man that other people don't know. You're making deals that other people don't know about. It's called conspiracy. The idea, the word conspiracy comes from the word conspire. Spire is to breathe. You perspire or you conspire. To conspire means to breathe together. So when you see the football team all crowded around, they all come together, crowded around, they're talking for a few moments. That's what you call conspiracy, because the word actually means to come together and breathe together. To everybody's breathing together. We're all collectively together, and we're talking in private. So we're breathing together. Well, the word breathing together in Latin is conspire. And so this is what we have, is a world based on powerful people breathing together around us to control us. We, unhappily, as people, don't normally conspire. We don't conspire with our fellow man to do anything about our situation. We just go along with whatever the government tells us, whatever the powers that be, whatever they tell us, we just do it. We just go along because we think that we don't have any power to do anything. Well, because you have no power, because you have no knowledge. Knowledge is power. Once you understand how governments really work, and now you begin to conspire with your friends and say, no more. We're no longer going to do this. We're no longer going to buy into the system. Now you begin to see where power comes from. The more people get together, the more the regular people get together and start waking up, the more trouble it's going to be for government, because they're used to being able to control you by lying to you, playing you for a fool, entertaining you with their movies. It's an incredible story.
Now, there's a dark occult aspect to this. It seems that their belief system is based on ancient occult beliefs. Some people say that it's Satanism or satanic, but I happen to think it's something much older than that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, something far, far bigger and far older. And I don't believe in the idea of a Satan. I understand that the word in the Bible is a Satan, S-A-T-A-N, a Satan. A Satan is someone who is opposing you in a courtroom. So if you go to court with somebody, they're opposing you, they're your enemy. in a courtroom. They're your enemy. And so the word in the ancient language was a satan, someone who is opposing you. And so therefore, if you want to do good, somebody wants you to do bad. So we say it's Satan. No, Satan is someone who is opposing you in a courtroom. But I do believe that there is a spiritual world that is bent on controlling and destroying the human family. We can't see them. They're spirits. And so that's why I agree with the Christian idea, because all the church and all the religions of the world have said the same thing, not just Christianity. Christianity talks about good angels and bad angels, or good spirits and bad spirits, and demons and devils and poltergeists. And Islam talks about the jinns and all the spiritual enemies of the human race. We're talking about intelligent creatures which you cannot see. They're called spirits, and they are all around us. And of that, there's no doubt in my mind about that. I know that is true. And so there are devils and demons and spirits, but what are they actually in fact? And so we give them names, we give them words, we use words to denote what we're talking about, but it doesn't really tell you what they are. When you say an angel, what is an angel? I don't know. All I know is you can't see one. They're supposed to be here. They're all around you. You have guardian angels. What is that? I don't know. There's some kind of a spiritual presence around you that's guarding you and protecting you. But what is it? Well, we don't know what it is. So we just go on to go watch a ball game. Don't worry about it. Just understand that there are spirits here who are highly intelligent, very clever, and very powerful, and they can do things to you, but you can't do anything to them. They can see you, but you can't see them, and they can harm you, and you can't harm them because you can't even see them. And so I do believe that there is a spirit world that is trying to destroy us. And boy, we are in the middle of it now in America. We're in the middle of a horrible, terrible cultural fight for our lives, to fight for the culture of freedom and liberty and justice and humanity to all people. That is under the gun. We have people in this country who are enemies of anybody who wants to talk about freedom and liberty and justice and taking care of your family and your children and your grandmother and your grandfather and your family. There are people here who say, the hell with you and your family. We want you dead. We don't want this country around. We're tired of freedom and liberty and justice. We don't need that. We want you to crawl on your knees over here to what we tell you to do. And so Americans used to be known as the land of the free and the home of the brave. We're no longer land of the free or home of the brave. Like Dick Gregory said, you're not free or brave. If you were free and brave, you'd have done something about the Federal Reserve banking system a long time if you were brave. You're not free or brave. You are a slave in your own country. So where did we go from there? Well,
we were talking about the occult aspects of everything, and another disturbing thing is it seems that they use elaborate rituals. For what reason? Who knows? It seems like, mass sacrifices, staged events, and then there's also the child trafficking and pedophilia. That's, I think, why people, automatically go to Satanism, because of all the dark things that are occurring along with some of these secret societies and, deep state black ops and things.
We see that. We see it happening all the time. I mean, you can't pick up a newspaper. You see some gang has raped some child, or cut their head off, or murdered somebody, and it was a gang. And sometimes the serial killers work with other serial killers. It's a organized violence against the human family. And so, yeah, I believe that there is a spirit behind the human race that is trying to harm us as a creation, trying to destroy our freedom and destroy our intellectual freedom and our spiritual freedom, and to be able to think for ourselves. We know that there are organizations, organized criminal organizations, that do not want you to be able to protect yourself and talk about them and talk, to explain and expose them. They don't want you out there exposing them, who they are. They're criminals. They want you to keep your mouth shut and just do what we tell you to do, and you'll be all right as long as you keep your mouth shut. We give you baseball games. We give you football games. We give you all kinds of entertainment and games. We give you alcohol, drugs. We give you anything you want to keep you entertained, but keep your nose out of the business of running this planet. The people who run this planet is a big club, and you ain't in it. But as far as I'm concerned, it's about time we start waking up to the fact that there are people who are running this planet, and they're using you as a fool. They're fooling you and lying to you and tricking you. And the entire world you live in does not work the way you think it does. Nothing in this world works the way you think it does. Your religions, your government, your philosophies, your banks, your insurance companies, nothing is what you think it is. There's a whole different world out there about how the world really works.
Now, some of these in control are so psychotic, and some of the things they do are so awful. It makes you think that something else is pulling the strings when it comes to the control of these people. Do you think that they're communicating with off-world entities or the spirit world to try and, or getting orders from them?
I think that's overwhelming and obvious. Yes, I think that's profoundly obvious. We are being led by other world entities, other world intelligences. Our technology alone proves that. I mean, for 1,000 years, we've lived the way that all humans have until we come up to about 100 years ago. We were just riding the horse buggies and a horse and carriage and living like Little House on the Prairie. And in the passing of 100 years ago, we're walking on the moon with lasers and atomic bombs and nuclear communication around the world with the web, etc. We have took major steps, like the astronaut said, one giant step for mankind. How are we getting that knowledge in 100 years? 100 years from riding a horse buggies and a horse and carriage and going to church in the morning on a horse and buggy and going to town on a horse and buggy. Today we go in Maseratis. We go in jets. We go in 747s. We roam around the earth. How do we do all of that and get all of that knowledge in just 100 years? Where did all that kind of thinking come from? Somebody's been leading you to understand and to develop your technology. Somebody is putting it into our heads to know how to do things that we never knew was possible before. So I know that that's what's happening.
Now, do you think that there are, say, good ETs and bad ETs that, some are actually looking out for us and some are working with some of these secret societies?
Yes, I think that's exactly right. I think that's what the scripture actually says in the Bible. If you go to the first book in the Bible, which is Genesis, that's what it actually says. But most people don't know that because they don't know how the first book of the Bible has been mistranslated and misconstrued, because the people who translated the original Phoenician Canaanite scriptures into English for the King James, and it became known as the King James translation. King James authorized, it's called the Authorized Bible. Why? Because King James, the King of England, he authorized you to read this particular translation of the book. He didn't authorize you to go stick your nose in the things you're not supposed to know. He authorized you to read this particular book. Why? Because it was translated the way he wanted it written. The way he wanted it written, it was authorized by him. So this is the authorized version. And if you're going to be a Christian, you read this. Or you don't read nothing. You keep your mouth shut. You don't know nothing. If you want to read something to make you feel like you're a Christian and make you feel holy, and read the authorized version. But when you start reading the authorized version, you will find out that the translators of the English Bible were excellent. They were excellent, brilliant minds on the English language, on the King's English. They were excellent, but they weren't that hot on Hebrew and Greek. And so they made mistakes when it comes to certain Hebrew and Greek words. They weren't really sure. So they used terms that became totally confusing. So that's why today in Christianity, nobody has any idea, period, no matter what your education, nobody has any idea what's actually being said in the book of Genesis. Because very few people bother to even do that kind of research. And those who do that kind of research are usually going to reference books which are written by the people who run the planet. They write those books for you to read. But if you really begin to look and do the research on the etymology of words and begin to understand that what you've been taught in college, so you can be a minister, you have to go to a seminary and you become a minister. Why? Because you are studying to be a minister, a Christian minister. What are you studying? Well, I'm studying all the biblical research material. Oh, really? And who wrote that biblical research material? Well, it says here the Rockefeller Brothers Trust Fund owns. Yeah, it says Rockefeller Brothers Trust Fund. The Rockefellers paid for that to be translated. Or the Rothschilds paid in England to have those books translated. So they're not going to say something that Rockefeller don't want it said. That's the authorized reference works. But then when you get, and then today we have a whole new world breaking forth where there are intelligent and profoundly brilliant people who are now beginning to be honest and tell the people what these words really mean and where they actually came from, and beginning to explain where these religions have actually come from and how you have been purposely deceived by the words that these reference works tell you. And this is what you have to study if you're going to be a minister. You have to study this, and this is what we want you to teach. And when you say, well, yeah, but that's not what it actually says, well, then you're not getting your license to be a minister. So go back out and go get a job at McDonald's, because you're not going to be a Christian minister. If you're going to be a Christian minister, you teach what I tell you to teach, what I told you to teach. And you read the books and you take a test. And therefore, if you pass your test, you can be a Christian minister. Well, that's the way Jesus did it. He went to college and university and got a degree. And that's what the apostles did. They all went to college and got a degree and took their test. And now they can be an apostle. No, that's a bunch of bull. We're talking about our religion, which is a laid down pattern for people to follow, not a spiritual understanding. Spirituality is something totally different from religion. Religion is a corporation. And the corporation, churches are corporations. That's why churches are divided into denominations, like a 10 or a 20 or 50 or 100. Those are denominations. Well, that's what churches are. They're denominations. They're just corporations that make money and control people. But once you see that and understand the government gives them the corporation, they give the corporation the right to exist. The federal government, the United States, gives the imprimatur to the churches to operate, but they have to teach what the government wants them to teach. They don't have to pay any taxes, but you better teach what we're telling you to teach. So that's why today you got all the big shot clergy all talking about how wonderful Israel is, and we got to support Israel, and Christians love Israel. They're not telling you where Israel came from and who founded that country and where the money came from. The clergy don't tell you that. Why? Because they don't know. All they know is you better go out there and talk about how wonderful Israel is, because you got a lot of people depending on you, and you better go out and say what we tell you to say. So it's secret societies that finance and control our religions, our governments, our television shows, our movies. Our whole entire life is being controlled by people who you don't even know exist.
Seems at one point religion was a really good control method, but then people, just stopped being as religious. They stopped, following these things. But now they're using different methods such as television, media, our cell phones, distractions.
That's exactly right.
And along with poisoning us through our food, water, and air and everything. But it's just different methods now.
It works, though. It seems to be working fine.
Right, yeah.
Everybody seems to love it. Everybody seems to buy into it. Nobody's questioning it. Like George Carlin said, that nobody seems to worry. Nobody seems to care. They just go along and believe whatever they've been told. And go watch your ball game and drink your beer and don't worry about it. I know, and it's an extraordinary experience that we're having on the earth. People are beginning to awaken, and I say that's what you do when you're in prison. If you're in a federal prison, every morning you begin to awake. But just because you're awakening does not mean that you're not in prison. And so you're still in a prison. You got to do something more than just wake up. You got to start really opening your mind, because your mind is like a parachute. It don't work if it's not open. You really got to open your mind and start thinking and questioning, where do things come from? Where does the church come from? Where does that word church come from? And you talk about Jesus Christ. Where does the word Christ come from? What does it mean? Was it a last name? Mr. and Mrs. Christ had a baby called Jesus, so he becomes Jesus Christ. No, Christ comes from a Greek word, Christos. In Greek is Christos, in Latin is Christ. Today we have somebody called Jesus Christ. It's Jesus the Christos, the anointed Christos, because in the ancient Greek world, Christos was oil. So therefore today we have Crisco. Crisco is what company has it? There's what's the name of the company that publishes that has the oil? Crisco oil.
Right, yeah.
It's a cooking oil called Crisco. Crisco is a Greek word which translated into Latin is Christ. So therefore, as I think there's a cooking oil called Crisco. It's a Greek word for oil. Why? Because oil was used for anointing. And so today, when a king or queen of England is anointed, or any king or queen anywhere is anointed, according to what the word anoint means, most people use that word, Jesus one of the anointed, or they're one of the anointed, or the king of England's anointed. The word anointed is a word in Latin for sex. So when you talk about somebody being anointed, you're talking about sex. That's why they have to pay. They say that the king is born with a silver spoon in his mouth. We say that about people who are wealthy and powerful. They're born with a silver spoon. Why? Because this is the way it works. According to the ancient history, when a king was anointed king, the church would take a bowl that had cooking oil in it, Christos, and it would take a silver spoon and pull the Christos and pour it on the king's head. And so taking the oil and pouring it on the king's head, he was being anointed. Why is that symbol? Look up the word anointed. It means to take oil and pour it on your head. to pour it on something, is to anoint that. And so this is why if you get a sore, you get some salve or something, and you're rubbing it on that sore, we call that anointment. You're anointing that sore that you're putting the oil on, putting the medicine on. So anointing has to do with sex. That's why they put the oil on the head of the king, because in the ancient world, before sex, the man would lubricate his penis with oil, pour oil on his meal. Why? Because it's easier having sex if it's lubricated. So that's why they call it anointing. And then when we read in the Bible about Jesus was one of the anointed, or Jesus was anointed, you better go back and understand what those words mean. And who was Jesus? Where did we get the name Jesus from? Well, nobody ever asked the question, because everybody knows Jesus. No, I don't think you do. I don't think you know anything about religion, because I've been studying for 60 years on the dark side, and I can tell you where it all comes from. It comes from sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It comes from the ancient world with words and terms and ideas that you have never heard before, where these ideas of religion have really come from. The ancient Greeks, and I mean the very most ancient Greeks, they call that orb that comes up in the morning that lights up the whole earth, we call it the sun. That's our word, S-U-N. But no, that's not. The ancient Greeks call it Iesus, I-E-S-U-S, I-E-S-O-U-S, or I-E-S-U-S. And then in Latin, I's and J's are interchangeable. A J is an I with a little tail. But I's and J's are straight letters, I and J. And so, and we now know that I's and J's are interchangeable. So therefore, a word that starts with I can also start with a J, because J and I is interchangeable. So therefore, if you take Iesus, I-E-S-U-S, for the sun, and change the I to a J, it becomes J-Esus, J-E-S-U-S, Jesus. Jesus is the Greek word for the sun, Iesus. And therefore, we call him God's Son. We call Jesus God's Son, S-U-N. And that's why we say Jesus is God's Son. He's the light of the world. Of course, the sun is the light of the world. What lights our world if it's not the sun? And he has 12 helpers. He had 12 apostles. That's right, the 12 signs of the zodiac, the 12 months of the year. There are 12 stones on the breastplate of the high priest in Judaism. There are 12 brothers of Joseph, the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 great prophets, the 12 minor prophets, the 12 major prophets, the 12 signs of the zodiac, the 12 months of the year, the 12 apostles. Everything in the Bible is done with 12. Why? Because it has to do with the sun and the 12 months of the year. And each month has a astrological symbol connected to that month. So therefore you have 12 signs of the zodiac. You have 12 months of the year. And the 12 all has, as I said, all has to do with the sun. You're not going to have any zodiac without the sun. You're not going to have any season without the sun. So that's why Jesus is the reason for the season. That's right, the sun is the reason for the season. You're not going to have a season without the sun. How many seasons do you have? You have 4. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The 4 Gospels are talking about the 4 seasons of the year. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, spring, summer, autumn, winter. And it's all in relation to the worship of God's Son, the light of the world. And that's why Christians go to church on Sunday. They're worshiping the sun. And on Easter comes from the word Eastern, the star of the east. Well, what star is in the east if it's not the sun? The sun's a star and it's in the east, comes up in the east, so it's East Star. It's an eastern star. And therefore, Christians go out at 5 o'clock in the morning on East Star morning, and they have something called an East Star sunrise service. An Easter sunrise service, where they go to church on Sunday. All of the religions of the world have understood for thousands of years that it's sun worship. The Christians are worshiping the sun. They don't realize that. It's just worshiping the sun. But then again, the Islamic world are worshiping the moon. They're moon worshipers. And the Hebrews, the people we call the Hebrews, were originally worshipers of the moon. They were called moon worshipers. That's why all Jews would tell you that their calendar is a lunar calendar. Christians have a solar calendar. We judge our day from sunrise to sunrise. Not the Jews. They count their days from sundown to sundown. Why? Because that's when the moon comes out, is at sundown. The moon comes out at 6. That's why all holy days in Judaism is after sundown. It's at 6 o'clock, because that's when their God comes out, the moon.
It's very interesting. Now, I'd like to touch on a couple more things before we close out tonight. There's some very interesting things going on with disclosure, with the media talking about aliens. Now we have a former rock star forming an agreement with the Army to study quote-unquote exotic materials. There's just so much strange stuff going on right now. It feels like we're being prepped for something. What are your thoughts on it?
I think that's exactly what's happening. I think the whole human race is being prepped and prepared for something which is coming. And it's going to be so spectacular that the human family has better wake up and start getting ready to prepare for it, because it's coming whether you like it or not. And that's why I think it's going on. I think the human family is being prepared by Hollywood. Steven Spielberg has been told to do what he's producing. All of his movies about UFOs and aliens. What is Steven Spielberg? Why is he talking about aliens and extraterrestrials and close encounters and ET? Because Steven Spielberg, I remember many years ago, did an interview, and they asked him about his movies, and he said, "I don't make movies to entertain. I make movies to comment on relevant things which are happening in the world. People need to know about. I make movies about things that people need to know about. I'm not making them to entertain you." So if that's the case, then what are you promoting all the movies about extraterrestrials and ETs and UFOs and all that? Well, according to him, it's because it's important. And you're going to find out why it's important. And therefore you have the movie, his latest movie was, one of his latest movies was War of the Worlds. Did you see the War of the Worlds from Steven Spielberg?
Yes.
What he was saying in that movie was right there in New York, under the streets of New York, was the extraterrestrials. They were right there in New York under the street. Remember at the very beginning of the movie, the street cracks open and this thing comes out. And that's why it said in the movie advertisement, they are not coming, they are already here. And it said, War of the Worlds. They're not coming, they're already here. And he has them coming out from under the streets in New York. And the idea is that he's trying to tell you the extraterrestrials that you think are silly nonsense, they're actually here and they're getting ready because there's a war coming with them. They're getting ready to invade our planet, and we have to have something. We've talked to the president. We came up with an idea to call it Star Wars. And the Star Wars is some kind of a highly sufficient and integral system of protecting the earth from somebody and something. It's out there in space, Star Wars. Yeah, well, talk to George Lucas about Star Wars. I did. I know George Lucas. I had lunch with him. And I've got pictures of me with George Lucas and Michael Eisner, the president of Disney. And believe me, these people know what's coming. They know what they're doing. With Indiana Jones, The Last Crusade in Germany, with the Cup of the Grail, the Cup of Christ, The Last Crusade, or the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Steven Spielberg is a lot of things, but stupid is not one of them. If he's making a movie about the Lost Ark of the Covenant, there's a reason. There's a reason why he made that movie. It was so famous and so big at the time, and it opened up the Indiana Jones trilogy, because there's something going on here that the Jews in Hollywood know, but they're not telling you. They're playing you for a fool and beginning to prepare you for something coming. So we go to the movies and we pay for it ourselves. We pay for the movie. And so you go to the movies and watch the Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade, the Crusade for the Cup of Christ, or the Raiders of the Lost Ark. They're telling you something, but you're not listening because you don't know what they're doing. If you go back and watch Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, when Indiana Jones in the movie is called to Washington, D.C. by the U.S. government, and they commission him to go out into the world and find the lost Ark of the Covenant. Remember? And they didn't ask him if he would. They said, we are ordering you to. The government has ordered you to get out there and find it, because we know the Nazis are looking for it. Hitler wants it. And so you need to find it before they get it. We need to have it before the Nazis get it. And we're not asking you, we're telling you. You need to get out there and find it. We will finance you on anything you need, but you better find it and do it now. Now, where does he go? Nobody seemed to think about this. Where did Indiana Jones go immediately when he was sent out to find the lost Ark of the Covenant? Where did he go? It's the lost Ark of the Covenant of the Hebrew people. So where did he go? Did he go to the Holy Land? No, he went to Tibet. Northern India, Tibet is where he went first. Oh, really? Why did he go to Tibet? Well, why? And when he got into Tibet, he found out the Nazis were there, remember? The Nazis were already in Tibet. They're looking for the lost Ark too. Well, why would Indiana Jones and the Nazis both be in Tibet first? Because the whole story is based on Tibet. And you cannot understand the lost Ark of the Covenant and the Covenant of Israel, the Holy of Holies, unless you understand the religion of Tibet. All right, so Indiana Jones goes to Tibet, and he's looking for information that will lead him to the lost Ark. Well, the Nazis know you. That's where you're going to need to go. If you're going to learn where the lost Ark is, you need to go to Tibet. You'll find it. You'll find out where it is in Tibet. It's not in Tibet, but you'll find out where it is if you go to Tibet. And so he goes to Tibet, and he finds this one little crystal that will supposedly will show him where the lost Ark is. Now he's got the crystal. The Nazis had it, but he got it. And now he's going with that crystal to find the lost Ark. Where does he go? Does he go to the Holy Land, to Israel, the Holy Land? No, he goes to Egypt. Why? Because the whole story of the lost Ark of the Covenant is an Egyptian story. It came out of Egypt. It has nothing to do with Judaism, has nothing to do with the Hebrew religion. It is an Egyptian story. And the whole idea of an ark is an Egyptian word. A-R-K is an Egyptian word, ark, not Hebrew. And so the whole idea is that the lost Ark of the Covenant was the lost Ark of the Hebrews. No, it's not the lost Ark of the Hebrews. It has nothing to do with Hebrews or Jews at all. It has to do with Egypt. and that's where Indiana Jones finds the lost ark, is in Egypt. Most
Very
people
interesting.
don't think that deeply about anything. They just want to go drink their beer and be entertained and watch a movie. They don't know what it means. They have no idea what's being said by Hollywood. They have no idea.
Yeah, we could spend a whole nother show on just that. But with the way things are going, you said that there could possibly be some sort of alien invasion. I was going to ask you if you see us ever breaking away from this slave system that we're in. I mean, we do see people waking up to it now, but if we've got, some sort of invasion coming, that's a whole new thing we've got to worry about too.
Yeah, I think that there is an invasion coming. And I think that, I've heard the story about there must be some kind of a fake invasion. The government's going to sponsor some kind of fake invasion, which will scare the boogeyman, and will going to scare us all. And we have to run to the government to help us, and the government will protect you. I think what's really happening is that there is, in fact, going to be an invasion. And the government knows it, and they are trying to prepare the people so when it comes, the people don't go crazy and start killing and eating each other. And if we were to wake up one morning and find out there is an alien invasion, like the movies, some of those movies that have come out in the last few years, what was it? Where the big alien invasion was coming, and all the countries of the world got together to fight this terrible enemy. I think that that's what's coming. I think we're going to be invaded soon. And I think the government knows that. And I think the government has been told by the aliens, look, we're coming in. That's what Hitler did. He would send in intelligent people to talk to the government officials and say, look, tomorrow morning at 4 o'clock in the morning, we're coming in. And God help you if you give us any problems. We're coming in, so you better get your people ready. Because tomorrow morning we're coming in, so we're giving you a heads up. Get ready for us. And tell your people, do not fight us when we come in. You don't want to do that, because we're coming in we're ready for a war. If you want a war, you're going to have one. So get your people ready and tell them that we're coming in. So
do you think these are malevolent ETs that are preparing for this?
I don't think so. I think maybe the ETs are preparing us, are the good ones who are trying to tell us what's coming. But I think the real story is that we have extraterrestrials out there who are very powerful. They have a technology we don't have. They understand things we don't understand. They're far superior to us. And so it was Ronald Reagan's idea to come up with something called a Star Wars, a situation where we can protect the Earth from out there. Why would we want to protect the Earth from out there? Well, because your real problem is coming from out there. So you need to set up your defenses. We got all kinds of defenses on the planet right here. We got all kinds of military-industrial complex here. But you ain't ready for what's coming from out there. So you better set up your whole military-industrial complex out there in space called Star Wars, and get ready, because somebody's coming. And when they get here, you're not going to believe what's going to happen. It's going to be incredible. And so I have been told by people who work at NASA. I've talked to so many of the scientists there. And there's one guy there, one scientist, who's written a book, the most startling book you will ever hear from. You'll ever hear from anybody who worked at NASA. It was called Ringmakers of Saturn. The book is called Ringmakers of Saturn. And in that book, the scientist who wrote it is a dear friend of mine, but nobody knows where he is now. He's probably no longer with us. But he was saying that we know that Saturn as a planet is actually inhabited. Saturn has inhabitants. We know that because we've seen them. And he was talking about the ships that come into Saturn. When we sent out the Cassini satellite thing, they were taking pictures and they saw ships come in. UFOs, whatever you want to call them. And those ships were so large when they came into Saturn, they were inside the Saturn. They went into the planet, not landing on it. They went into it and they were coming out of it. And he said those ships were estimated by NASA to be at least 3,300 miles wide from New York or from Canada, north of Canada, Newfoundland, to San Diego. One ship being wider than from San Diego to Newfoundland. Well, what kind of a ship like that? That is enormous. Well, he was saying, no, they got plenty of pictures of ships like that coming into the planet Saturn. And it looks like the planet Saturn may be a staging point for an invasion of the Earth. Because we see these ships coming into Saturn, but they're not leaving. They're just going in, but they're not coming out. And sometimes they'll come out, but usually most of them are coming in, but they're not coming out. Why? It begins to look like there's some kind of a staging of a military movement against the Earth. Somebody's coming here from somewhere, and Saturn is the home office of this new invasion force. So I would be a bit surprised if we're going to be attacked by something coming from Saturn. It may sound crazy now, but when it happens, just remember it was Jordan Maxwell who told you.
Very fascinating. And Mr. Maxwell, thank you so much for joining us tonight. That was excellent information, and I'm definitely going to have you back on in the future.
Absolutely. Love to do it because there's so much more we could talk about.
Yeah, definitely.
And just remind everybody that I have a website, and there are other people out there and on the web who have my name on their website. I only have one website. I got two websites, but the only one that I really have for the public is called Jordan Maxwell Show, SHOW. Anything besides Jordan Maxwell Show is not mine. It doesn't belong to me. Other people are using my name to make money off of me.
Yeah, I'll put the link to yours in our description. And once again, thank you so much for joining us, and you have an excellent night.
You too, and thank you very much, and let's do it again.
Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm Chris Matthew. I'm having a wonderful time here at the Laughlin UFO Mega Conference, and I am right here with the one and only legendary Jordan Maxwell. Jordan, how are you?
I don't know.
Yeah, like he just told me, he's just going with the flow right now. It's been a wonderful conference, and you had an amazing presentation. I want to thank you so much for sharing that with us, because this will probably be your last presentation. Is that right?
I think so. That very well may be. Because of my age, it's not very easy for me at 80 years old to travel and speak at conferences.
Yes.
I did that and enjoyed it immensely when I was 30. But now at 80, it's not that easy any longer. So I do the best I can. And the owner of this event was such a nice guy. When he asked me to speak, I said yes.
Yes,
Normally I wouldn't, but because of him, he's been so good to me. He's such a nice friend. Over the years, I agreed to come to this event, but I don't think I feel up to traveling any longer to speak to audiences.
That's
much
quite.
as I love doing it.
Yeah.
If I were 30, I would love it.
It's quite understandable.
Yeah.
And yes, we do have to thank Bob for putting this wonderful thing all together. It's been a great event so far. And
people need to understand he's bringing speakers, authors, lecturers, teachers, scientists, physicists, all kinds of top of the line. You got people who are very knowledgeable on the world we live in.
Yes.
And how it's really working.
Yes.
Scientists who are legitimate scientists. So many of what we call today scientists in the scientific world are not scientists. They're religionists.
Yes.
They have their religion, their holy books, and their saints.
And the science has actually become their religion. It's become a new dogma for some of these mainstream researchers. You know, it's so hard for them to look at us and the wonderful research that independent researchers are doing and coming up with, and their truths. And they can't take the fact that we're exposing these truths. And speaking of that, you blew me away with some of the truths in your presentation. You know, starting with the religious aspect, how they use religion to just control everything.
It's so overwhelming when you see it. If you're not looking for it, you will never see something you're not looking for.
Yes.
If you're looking for it, it's there, right in front of you. For instance, how many people know that there is a definite connection, religiously speaking, between Judaism and Nazism? Very, very dark and interesting connections can be made between the Jewish religion and the Nazi Party. Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yes.
Steven Spielberg, I know. And Steven Spielberg is a lot of things, but stupid is not one of them.
Right.
And when he makes a movie, I was told by the chief, a lady who heads his research department at his studio, she told me, Mr. Spielberg is very, very particular about facts in his movies. He's a very, very adamant about having the factual, correct facts in his movie, so that no one will be able to charge him with being ignorant, didn't know something. He hires the best of the best researchers to find the facts for sure.
Yes.
Before he puts it into a movie. So if something's in his movie that you've never heard before, that's because you don't know. You better go back and find out what he knows. And so I talked with her. I sat in her office, and I was invited to come to see her. And I know that there is a definite connection between Judaism as a religion and Nazism as a philosophy.
Yes.
But most people never heard such a thing.
And we'll get to the end of your presentation, which was the big explosion about the controllers, you know, the main controllers.
Yeah.
But you also spoke of how New York was a sort of central hub for a lot of these elite players, right?
That's right.
Yeah, talk about that. Talk about you know, how.
Well,
the
if
gathering.
you understand that the Roman Empire was very, very politically and sociologically powerful. They were ruthless in their rule. The Romans would kill you, nail you to a cross if you even act like you're going to give Caesar any problem. They will teach you a lesson, teach the whole world a lesson, execute you in public, to make sure everybody knows who the boss is in this empire. It's Caesar. You mess with him and you're dead. And why was the government so adamant to back him? Because he represented them, the government. And as long as everybody was frightened to death of Caesar, that means they would be frightened to death of Caesar's politicians and the government. And so both sides protected each other. Caesar protected his Senate, and the Senate protected him. That was the idea. And so when Caesar had taken over, ultimately, one day, finally, he had been able to take over all of Europe from Rome. And for 2,300 years, Caesar has dominated Europe. Rome has dominated Europe. And for 2,300 years, Europe has dominated the world, because Spain's all over the world, France is all over the world, all the different countries in England are out colonizing the earth, and Caesar runs Europe. Anything that Caesar owns, when they take over someplace in the world, he owns that too. And so today, most people do not realize the United States of America, in point of fact, does not really exist today. There is no such a thing as the United States of America. There is a Roman Senate. And Rome, when the Caesar ruled all of Europe, he got to a point where he run all of Europe from Rome. But he was not happy until he owned Britannia, a British Empire. He wanted them on their knees to him. So Caesar eventually decided to send in his troops into Britannia to take over the British Empire, not ask them, just take it over.
Right.
And so they did. Well, where did Caesar's government rule Britannia when they were in Britain? Where did they rule Britannia from? Caesar's base of operation for the Roman Empire was in a city in England called York, England. That's where he set up his governmental system. Well, when the United States of America was being founded, Caesar decided a new area of the world. So he sent over and produced a place called New York.
Yes.
It was called the Empire State, the Roman Empire state of the Roman Empire, North America, New York. And Caesar ultimately, the Roman philosophy was ultimately to take over the entire globe for Caesar, the whole world. Well, that's what we've finally been able to do for Caesar,
Yes.
Rome. In New York, we have something called the United Nations. And the United Nations is in New York. The United Nations symbol is a Roman Catholic symbol, a Roman symbol. And the Pope is referred to as the Holy Father. Why? Because he speaks for God. He is the God Father, if you get my drift.
Yes. They just moved the empire here to the United States.
To modernize it.
To modernize it, yes. And for the last few minutes of our little talk today, you spoke of the otherworldly entities that these people worship. That it goes back to the sun god, and that they are still worshiping these same entities today. And they force society to become part of this.
Whether you like it or not.
Yes.
You will bow your knee to Caesar. And Caesar has his symbol for himself around the world as a sun god. He represents the brightest light in our universe, the sun. So therefore, most people, most Christians have never ever thought about the idea about who owns the sun. That's a very important question. Somebody must own the sun. Why? Well, because that's the way the world is. Everybody owns something. And so somebody must own the earth and own the sun. And so you ask the question, who can own the sun? No human could do it. Well, if you're philosophically inclined or if you're religious, you might want to say that God owns the sun. Well, if God owns the sun, yes, you can. then that means that the Son belongs to God. He's God's Son, our risen Savior. Why? Because it rises every morning about 5 o'clock, 5:30 it rises. And so therefore he is our risen Savior. Of course the Son, S-U-N, is your risen Savior. If it don't come up, we're dead in 3 weeks. If there is no sun, there's no food, there's no warmth. You want to talk about cold and freezing, icebergs? The whole earth is going to freeze over. There will be no light forever and ever. So without the sun giving us energy, and the energy is light. And so the ancient people said that the sun was pure energy. And that if the sun were able to keep his energy for himself, he would live forever because he is pure energy. Energy is life. The battery runs out of energy, we say it's dead battery, right? So if the sun were to keep its energy for itself, it would last forever. But the ancient people said the sun is very generous. He wants to give his energy for our whole of our solar system. So all of our planets can have plants and life and food, whatever, and warmth. And so therefore it was understood that God's Son, our risen Savior, is giving his life so that you might live. But without the sun, you ain't going to be here much longer.
Right.
So if you're going to continue to live, you got to eat and have warmth and have food, and there will be children born and more people be born, and life will go on as long as the sun shares his energy. So therefore, God's Son, the light of the world. We're told that the Messiah is the light of the world. Of course, the Son, S-U-N, is the light of this world. And he is giving his energy so that the world of mankind can live. So God's Son is dying so that you might live. And he has 12 helpers, like 12 apostles, which match the 12 stones on the breastplate of a high priest. The 12 stones represent the 12 months of the year. And the 12 months of the year are the 12 signs of the zodiac. And when we talk about God's kingdom, what are you talking about when you use that term, God's kingdom? We hear it all the time, but nobody seems to know what it really means and where it came from. We humans have a habit of putting all the life forms on the earth. We're in charge of everything.
Yeah.
And so we put all life forms in certain categories. And we say the ants are in colony, fish are in schools, cows are in herds, dogs are in packs. Go down the line with all the animals on the earth and all the creatures on the earth, we put them into little family lines.
Yeah.
What is it that we humans put into a kingdom? It's an animal kingdom.
Yes.
What is it that an animal, what is the word animal? We get the word animal, and we put the animals into a kingdom. In the ancient, and I do mean ancient Greek world, an animal was connected to the word zoo, Z-O-O, was a word connected to animals. So if you're going to study the animal, we call it, we're going to be studying zoology, the world or the kingdom of animals. And so that's where we get the word zoo. Animals are in a zoo. Why? Because ancient Greek animals were zoo. Okay? So therefore, the God's kingdom is the kingdom of animals. And what the zoo has animals, that's why we call it a zodiac. The zodiac, Z-O-D. The zodiac is the kingdom of animals that circle the earth. Where is the zodiac? It's in heaven. You ask a child, where is God's kingdom? It's in heaven. That's right. It's the zodiac. Jackson, go back and do your homework. The very word in the ancient Greek for an animal is zoo. Zodiac is the kingdom of God. That's why you have God's Son, S-U-N, and the 12 apostles of the 12 signs of the zodiac, or the 12 months of the year. Once you understand the subject of astrotheology and how the world really works and where religions have come from, and how we have developed our ideas of philosophy and religion and theology, you're finding all religion is based on two basic things. All religions are based on two basic things: the sun and the energy from the sun giving us life, and sex, which is life. That's when all religions have a very incredible amount of sex involved, and the sun involved. The sun is energy, and with that energy you create life. How? With sex. So the two factors that make up most religions of the world: Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, all based on sex and the sun.
The hidden world goes so deep. There's so many aspects to explore. We would be here all night trying to talk about everything. But what I'd like to close out on is you mentioned something big possibly coming, possibly this year. But I have had a feeling for a long time. I've talked with a lot of the other speakers that something big is happening, something underlying that needs to happen. I think that it's something that will change the world forever after it happens.
Well, perfect vision. Eye doctors will tell you perfect vision is 2020.
Yes, I just get the feeling maybe this year could be an event that would change the way everybody sees the world, the way the world works, and we could have a whole new society after this event. But it's just a gut feeling that I have. What are your thoughts on our future? There's so much going on right now, so much turmoil, so much rumors of war, the environmental situation, things with the coronavirus, society. What are your thoughts on what is coming in the near future?
Whatever it is, it's going to be very bad. You can bet on it. It's not going to get better until it gets worse. And it has to be bad enough. Whatever is going to happen has to be bad enough to wake the American people out of their sleep. But that's like awakening in China.
Yeah.
Because when you get the American people in the streets and they're scared and they're angry, it's going to be terrible. But the American people are capable of going improvement. We had a civil war here, and we're told in our history books that it was a very bloody war, very violent. A lot of bad blood going on.
Yeah.
The Civil War. We have Americans killing Americans. And people in the South are killing people in the North. So after the Civil War was over, it was decided by the guys who run our country, the big shots who run the country. It was decided by them that it would be better not to call this the United States of America. Because after the Civil War, we were a lot of things, but not united. So don't call yourself the United States. You're not united. One half of the male population was killing the other half. There's a lot of bloodshed. And it was a legitimate war. You don't think so? You go back and read some of the accounts of the absolute murder and against our people by our people. So that being said, that we were not a United States any longer after the Civil War. So in 1870, the question arose in America, what are you going to do with all the people? Because all the people are here. They still have babies. They still want to eat. They still want to grow. They still want to do business. And they're going to be here and they're going to eat. And so what are you going to do with all these people? They're no longer under the United States of America law.
Right.
There is no United States. We're not united. So how are you going to control them? What are you going to do? And all the whites that don't want the blacks here in this country, well, that's too bad. You got millions of blacks here, and they ain't going nowhere. They want to eat, they want to grow, they want to have children, and be treated as citizens. So how are you going to handle the problem of America, a big country with a lot of violent people? How are you going to take care of it? So it was decided, well, since we're not united, we ought to start an actual corporation and incorporate it in Delaware. And we should call the corporation United States Incorporated. And then we can make all the people in America employees of a federal corporation called United States Incorporated. That's like making all the people in America employees of Ford Motor Company.
Yeah, exactly.
And now, therefore, United States is a corporation, a municipal corporation. We don't have a government of the United States of America. We're not Americans. If you were living in the United States of America government, that's in Philadelphia, not in Washington, D.C. But we're not living under the United States of America. We're living under a corporation called United States Incorporated. And we are all individually employees of a corporation. Most people don't know that. That's why when you go into court, you cannot go into court and no judge and no lawyer will ever say, lawyers would never say to a judge, my client has a right. Because all lawyers know and all judges know the client has no right. Period. End of sentence. You go into court, you have no rights. You're not an American. America had rights. And the American people had rights. You don't have a right when you go into court. You're going into court. Why do you go into court? Because you play tennis on a court. How do you play tennis on a court with a racket? And the more you begin to see how this government really works, doesn't work like you think it does. It's a corporation. And as a corporation, the company called United States cannot make any laws. That's corporate business. No corporation on the earth can make a law, period. Unless you think Sears says that from now on, all Americans must do this and must do that. And you go to jail. You say, who said so? Sears said so. Sears is just a company, stupid. They're not positioned to make a law. Only a government can make a law. Well, the government would be United States of America, a government of the people, by the people, for the people. But we don't have the United States of America now. There's a civil war. So now we're under a corporation. A corporation cannot make laws, so we don't have any laws. So if it looks like the United States is lawless, we don't have no law.
Yeah.
It's just lawless. So that's why we have something today. Our legal system is called the United States Criminal justice. It's a criminal justice system because there are no laws. If you don't have the money, you don't have the protection. If you are a mega billionaire, nobody's going to mess with you.
Right.
Because you got 14 attorneys that will protect you. It's got nothing to do with what's right, what's wrong, and what's legal, and what's lawful.
No.
It amounts to how much money do you have, and who are you?
Exactly.
So that's the system we live in. It's called the U.S. criminal justice.
That being said, as a final thought today, before I let you go, what we just discussed, how we feel, there is something big that's going to happen. I see a lot more of the American people waking up to the corruption. I see a lot more people bucking the system, demanding answers. A lot of people come to these conferences for answers. Do you think that it will escalate into another civil war, that we will have to fight to get our sovereignty and freedom back, and that we will? Do you think people will actually stand up and do something about it?
I haven't yet.
No, they haven't. And I'm just hoping that,
I know it's a very difficult question. I believe it. Politicians at the top are asking that question. The congressmen who are running for Congress and the congressmen and the senators, they know what's coming. They're not stupid. They know America is being raped. It's being incredibly destroyed in front of our eyes. We've come to the point where the Democratic Party can actually come out in public and say, we need to kill the president. They've said that in the past. We need to kill this president. When in the hell on the earth has any government allowed a political party to come out and forcibly say to the public, we need to kill the king, kill Caesar? Nobody does that. You may not like him, but he's still the boss. And so you don't have to respect him, you respect the office. But the Democratic Party has gone on record as saying that the President of the United States should be killed. He should be assassinated. And nobody did anything.
Yeah.
The government did nothing. Why? Because we don't have a United States of America. We have a U.S. corporation. Therefore, there are no laws. There are policies. We live under something called public policy. And so we say that we have policy makers. Good, because they're not lawmakers. They can't make law. They're working for a company, a corporation. So they can make policy. The company can tell you what day you have to be at work or what time, how long you have to work before you get a break, how long your break is, your bathroom breaks. All of that is not a law from God. It's just a public policy. But suppose you don't like the policy, and suppose you tell the government, I don't like your policy. Well, the policy has to be backed up. And so the government has put into place a corporation called the United States. And the United States Corporation has policies. Policy is simply, this is the way we would like to do business. If you're going to work for us, you come in at 7, you go home at 3. Right? You come in at 9, you go home at 5. That's our policy. It doesn't come from the Almighty God, the universe. That's just the way we run our business.
Yeah.
And so the business has to have a president. So we got a president of the corporation. Also, all corporations have to have a vice president. Okay, so we got a vice president. And according to corporate law, all corporations must have a secretary treasurer. Okay, we got a secretary treasurer. It's just a business, for God's sake. That's what the mafia would tell you when they're killing you. We like you. I like you. You're my friend. We've been friends for years. But the boss says he's had enough of you. And you got to go.
It's business.
It's just business. He gave me the job,
Yeah.
and I will carry out the job, because if I don't, I'm going to go with you. Somebody's going to take care of both of them.
Right.
So therefore, you have to go. And I told you, we were friends to the end. And this is the end. No.
Mhm.
Therefore, the corporation called United States cannot make laws. It has a policy. And that's our government is referred to as public policy, not a republic. This is not a government, it's a corporation. And therefore, if, like I said, suppose you decide you don't want to go along with the policy, and it has to be backed up by something. So we have a group of people who will back up the policy. Whether you like it or not, you will conform and you will be in compliance. We have something called the policy informant. They're called police. Police enforce policy. Police enforce a policy. The policy is we don't like people going 70 miles an hour and 50 miles on the highway. That's our policy. And you are going 80, so we have the police deal with you, teach you a lesson. You pay a heavy fine in case you don't understand our policy. We have police. So people need to understand how the world works. Most people have no idea of the world.
And as the final, I guess, reveal of the presentation, you revealed who was behind it all. And I agree. I've done plenty of shows about it. The Zionists. They are the ones that
And Zionism has nothing to do at all with being Jewish.
Right.
Nothing.
Yes.
And no connection to Judaism at all. Zion goes back to the land of Canaan. Canaanite. Canaan is what we today call the state of Israel. It was not always called Israel. That area we call Israel today was always known in history as Canaan, the land of Canaan. And so the land of Canaan is where we get the word, because it was a hill in Canaan, the Canaanite hill. And that Canaanite hill was where the Canaanites worshiped their God, the ancient Canaan. And that hill in the Bible is called Zion. So Zionism is the worship of a Canaanite God. And that Canaanite God is incredibly important because that Canaanite God is connected to a very, very ancient and old demonic, depraving God of Egypt. His name is Aton, A-T-O-N. So what we are today being led as Americans into a worldwide dictatorship of Aton, worshiping the sun god Aton. And Aton is the major god of the Jewish people. They have led us into, the Americans have been led into worshiping Aton. This is why in Judaism today we're told we should not use God's name because his name is so holy, we should not use it. And if you do use his actual name, and you're not a Jew, and you're using his name, what do they call it? You're using his name
in vain. Yes. Yes.
Why? Because in vain, because you're not a Jewish rabbi. Why would you use God's name, his holy name? But Judaism worldwide has agreed upon a word which represents their God, which is all right to use. It's a substitute name. It's not God's name, it is a substitute. And so the Jews tell us that God's name is this new name that they're giving us as a substitute name. We can use it. It's all right.
And that substitute name all Jews know. It's called Tetragrammaton. The Tetragrammaton is 4 letters inside of a sun. Everywhere you see it, any synagogue on the earth, all synagogues always have on the altar a sun with the sunburst, which is called a corona. The sunburst with the sparks around the sun is called a corona. And today we have a coronavirus. Gotta wake up.
Yeah.
Something's coming down here in America and on the earth. And we are so ignorant and ill-informed and unread. We haven't got the faintest idea where coronavirus comes from and what the word means. But the Jews will tell you the word we can use for their God, for the Jewish God's name, is Tetragrammaton. Why? Because it's 4 Hebrew letters inside the sun, which is the aton. And so the 4 letters are called the Tetragrammaton. Tetra. Tetra means 4. Gram, G-R-A-M-M, means a letter, like A, B, C, D, is a gram. This is our word grammar. So you got tetra, gram, aton, A-T-O-N, tetragrammaton. So therefore, the 4 letters inside the sun is tetra, 4 gram letters, 4 aton, the God of the Hebrews. So the Jews today are leading the world into the worship of the Old Testament and into the New Testament. And the New Testament is telling us about the aton, God's Son, the light of the world. Of course, the Son, S-U-N, is the light of the world. And he is our risen Savior. Of course, it rises every morning at 5:30. And it is your Savior. If it don't come up, you're dead.
Right.
And so when you see the aton, the tetragram, aton, A-T-O-N, you begin to see what is now happening on the earth. We, on the earth, all mankind has now picked up the idea that we should worship the Almighty, true God, God chosen, true God is aton, tetragram, aton. And Aton was the sun god of Egypt. And he was connected to a very dark and ancient evil cult. The ancient Egyptians had cults and had spells that they put on the world. And we are in the right in the middle today of the worship of the Aton, tetragram Aton. And one of the symbols of the ancient sun god of Egypt was a swastika. There's the connection with the German people. The Germans also worship tetragram aton with a swastika on the head. Today in Israel, most people are not aware that in Israel, you go to some of the synagogues in Israel, and they have on the floors of the synagogue in Israel today big swastikas, red swastikas on the floor. You might want to ask yourself, if you're smart enough and if you're brave enough, why do the synagogues in Israel have swastikas on the wall and on the floors? Now, what does that have to do with Adolf Hitler? Well, the swastika represented the aton, the tetragram aton, the sun god. There was a sun rolling across the sky. That's why it's on legs. It rolled across the sky. So when you do the research, and I've been doing it for 60 years, and I'm not bragging where I say that there is a lot you need to know about theology and religion, and what God's kingdom, the zodiac, is all about. It has to do with 12 apostles, the 12 signs of the zodiac, 12 months of the year. The 12 brothers of Joseph, 12 major prophets, the 12 minor prophets, the 12 this, the 12 that. The Bible is filled with the number of 12. Why? Because it all has to do with the 12 signs of the zodiac, the 12 months of the year. This is why in all courts in America you have 12 jurors in a courtroom, because the judge is the ruler, and rulers have 12 inches. Yeah. And so he's the ruler, and he has 12 helpers who are going to bring to truth, bring the truth to light with the light of truth. So they're going to hear the story, and they're going to tell you what the truth. And that's why in America, whatever the jury decides, nobody can do anything with it. The jury says that they found you guilty, you're guilty. Even if you weren't even there, the jury says you're guilty, you are guilty, and that's it. And courts cannot, judges, courts, nobody can go against the jury's finding. Why? Because there are 12 jurors, like there are 12 apostles, like there are 12 major banks in the Federal Reserve System, there are 12 major banks. Everything is done in the symbolism of 12, based on the 12 signs of the zodiac, the 12 symbols of animals, the animal kingdom, God's kingdom. You ask a Christian child, where is God? God's out there. Well, I hate to tell you this, if God's out there, that means he's not from Montgomery, Alabama, not from New York, he's out there. Well, if he's out there, he's an extraterrestrial. He doesn't come from Earth. He's a higher form of light out there. And he, according to our theology and religion, created us. Well, if he is out there, an extraterrestrial, he has created us. And the scripture says that God created us to be like him. He created us in his image and his likeness, which means that we look like the God that created us. And we are like him. Therefore, we are crazy, we're violent, we are devoted to sex, fighting, wars. So is he. That's the one who created us. And we're created in his image and his likeness. So if we're created in God's image and likeness, that means the God who created us is a warring being God, who's involved heavily with sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and violence. You mess with God, he'll deal with you. And so I'm just saying that there's so much people in this world just do not know about the world and live there.
There is. Jordan, thank you so much for those fascinating connections, extraordinary stuff. Thank you for talking with me, and please enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you.